It's your late night one-stop shop for great music, great guests and features on the late slot.
I've been walking these streets so long, singing the same old song. I know every crack in these dirty sidewalks of Broadway, where hustle's the name of the game, and nice guys get washed away like the snow in the rain. There's been a load of compromising on the road to my horizon, but I'm gonna be where the lights are shining on me, like a rhinestone cowboy. I'm riding out on a horse in a star-spangled rodeo, just like them rhinestone cowboys. I'm getting cards and letters from people I don't even know, and offers coming over the phone, like a rhinestone cowboy. I'm riding out on a horse in a star-spangled.
Well, tonight on the Late Slot is a name you may or may not know, Chris Rainbow. It's not the big famous one. It's now not the Scottish one anyway. It's a different Chris Rainbow. Welcome to the Late Slot.
Good evening.
And how are you?
I'm very well, Paul. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to speak to you too. We might as well go.
Just before you go any further, I'd like to say I am the real Chris Rainbow, because the other Chris Rainbow, very good though he sadly has passed away now, but very good though he was, I was actually born Chris Rainbow, so I call myself the real Chris Rainbow sometimes. So just to get that straight for the listeners.
Yes, it could be confusing, couldn't it?
It can be very confusing, and we do a lot when recently people have been ringing me up saying, "Are you still alive?" Well, I am, so that's really good.
Oh dear, that's funny. Right, well, we might as well go back to your childhood then, because I believe you came from the area I live, in Huntingdon.
Well, I was born in Ely, on the Isle of Ely, and I was my father worked for Perkins in Peterborough, and I was brought up in St Ives, the little town not far away, and so I went to school there, went to Miss Groves Junior School in St Ives, and then we came down to the West Country when I was about 7 years old. We came down to live near Bristol, where I currently live now. But I have great memories of that area and do visit the area quite frequently. We still have some friends up there, so I love the Fenlands and that. So I suppose I'm a Fen boy, really.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Have you ever thought of moving back?
I'd love to, but obviously a lot of my work is in the southwest, and so to move means you've got to sort of start again, really. So I'm I get quite a lot of work singing and that in this area, and so probably it's not going to happen. And I've got family here now. Obviously, I've got a grown-up daughter and grandchildren, so probably going to stay here now.
Yeah, it seems like the best idea.
Yeah,
really.
I think so. You kind of get used to a place. It's lovely to go back, but I've not really seriously thought of going back to live there. But, you never know. You never know. If there's a rich widow up there, you never know.
So how old were you when you decided you wanted to be a musician?
Well, it kind of started at school. I had a big interest in the sort of 70s music, because that was when I was at school. And the local band we had at school desperately wanted a guitar player, so I got my dad to buy me a cheap guitar, probably cost only about £9, and I practiced as best I could, but when it came to the audition they said, "No, you're no good, we don't want you." So I went away rather dejected, but about 2 hours later they came back and they said, "Look, can you sing? Because we haven't got a singer either." And I, at that point, never done any singing at all, but I was so desperate to do the band that I said, "Of course I can," and I ended up being the singer in the band. So that was kind of how it started, by accident really. And I think the first song we used to do was the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction. I think that was our first one. I was about 14 then. And it was great, we loved it. We were dreadful, but we enjoyed it,
Ah.
We did a few gigs at the youth clubs and things like that, you know, and kind of got interested in it from there. So you know, the usual thing really, local bands and playing in little places and people, you know, coming along, and it was great fun, good fun days.
Do you have any funny stories from that time of any gigs you did?
Well, I do remember playing in a youth club in Wellington in Somerset, and we were doing a cover version of Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven, and as people, probably the listeners would know, it goes on quite a long time, and we recorded it on a little cassette recorder, and I can always remember when we played it back in the car, this girl's voice on it saying, "When's the disco coming on?" Because they were getting a bit fed up with us going on and on with this Led Zeppelin. Well, it was probably not a very good version of it, but yeah, I mean, the whole thing was rather amusing because I think we saw all these people on the TV and on record, and we wanted desperately to be like that, but of course we weren't ever going to be. We just did our best to sort of leap around on stage and look the part, really. But it was great fun. Yeah, great fun. I think a lot more of the funny stories came later, you know.
Last night, quietly, she walked through my mind as I lay searching for sleep. Her soft hands reached out, she whispered my name as she brushed a tear from my cheek. Before those funny, familiar, forgotten feelings stop walking all over my mind. Before those funny, familiar, forgotten feelings stop walking all over my mind.
You've written some songs. How many do you reckon you've written up to now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kind of started off singing. The first proper band I joined was called Scavenger, which was a heavy metal band. And I ended up in that band when I was about 16. Somebody put me forward for an audition, and I didn't particularly want to go to the audition because I had other things to do. I was at college, at Western Technical College at the time, and I went for the audition, and interestingly screamed and howled through these songs that they'd given me to learn, and they gave me the job. And so before I knew it, I was sort of on stage at local venues playing sort of rock music in for bikers and all kinds of things. And all the material that they did was original songs, and that was where I started getting the idea for writing songs. I was singing their songs at the time, but I remember submitting lyrics to them, but being only 16 and they were all in their 20s at that time, I think my first stab at writing songs was a little bit infantile, and they weren't too impressed, really. But that was my first sort of getting into kind of the music business. I can remember we used to play at a couple of motorcycle rallies, and there'd be punch-ups and things. It was all a bit rough and ready, but again, a good learning curve that was, and it got me interested in it. But the songwriting, I think the first time I started to write songs properly came a few years later. I was probably in my mid to late 20s, and I'd moved over to live in America, so I'm fast-forwarding a little bit. But I started to write songs when I was living in California and working in a little studio there called Pacific Coast Music. And I wrote quite a lot of songs and demoed those songs in that studio. And there was some very good material on there. But none of that actually got released because at that time I was recording cover versions, songwriter demos for people, and also doing recordings that I was releasing when I was doing shows over there, which were mainly country and western sort of covers. So sadly, about 40 songs were written there, and most of them have never seen the light of day. I do have the recordings, but they've never been officially released, which is a shame, and maybe I should perhaps look into doing something with them.
Yeah, you can put them on CDs or...
I could, yeah. This is pre-CD, of course, this era. We're now in the vinyl and tape era, so things weren't quite so easy. Now, as you know, Paul, it's easy. You can get these things copied and have covers done and release them on your own labels, and it's great, you know. But back in those days, it was slightly more convoluted, and it just never happened, you know.
And of course, these days, it's a hell of a lot cheaper to produce an album yourself, isn't it, on your own label?
But there's still that lovely thing about vinyl, you know. I still buy vinyl today, and I was brought up with it, and there's something really tactile about it. And you know, again, it's very expensive to get these things pressed up, and unless you're getting a big quantity done, and to do that, you've got to be an artist that's able to sell, you know, 5,000 plus copies of these things. People like me who play lots of shows and that, but we can't move those kind of amounts of, you know, units, so it's just not really cost effective to do that. But it would be nice in a perfect world.
That's right, and these days it's actually, you make more money doing gigs, don't you, than...
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the gigs is that you can put things on the internet, and obviously I've got CDs available on the internet and recordings, and obviously people are interested, but by the time the cost factor's taken out of all the promotion, you don't really get much out of that, if anything. And doing live shows, you're absolutely right. That's where people come along and they pay you, and you can sell your CDs there. I think it's probably still a good way of moving product, because people like to see you, and it's like a souvenir of their little evening out, isn't it? And people enjoy that, and they go home and say, I've seen this guy, and we liked him, you know, and that's great. Good for everybody, really.
And to me, personally, I'd say that live, if you see somebody live, it's a lot better than listening to even to a live CD. It's just totally different, isn't it?
I think the reason is obviously this thing called atmosphere. You know, when you go and have a recording, that's great because you get something tangible, you get something, you know, that's, you know, nice to play. But when you see people, you get the three-dimensional thing. You actually get the atmosphere of the evening. You get a bit of an idea of what the person is really like, what they look like, their personality, and of course that's good. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, still I like my recordings, but I do the live thing is great. I you know, I like to see performers myself that I admire, and I go and see them, and it's just wonderful. You know, if they live up to expectations, which more often than not they do, it's great.
Do you mainly just play in the West Country nowadays?
Well, I've done all sorts of things, but I tend to stick within the kind of 100 miles from home thing. So I'm tending to go up as far as just this side of London, this side of Birmingham. I go to Wales, down into Devon. I sometimes go into Cornwall, down to Dorset and that kind of area. So yeah, I'm kind of around and about, and you know, I've got shows in places like Swindon. Obviously I live near Bristol, and I go over to South Wales. So I travel quite a bit still, but obviously with the modern world being what it is, and the cost of getting to places, it's very often nice to be playing fairly locally. I mean, it's good, you know. But if people ring up, I go pretty much anywhere.
Have you ever done a gig where you've been a warm-up act for anybody famous at all?
Yeah, I did a few bits and pieces. I did an interesting gig some years ago for Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, which was rather an interesting experience. And we were playing in a band. I was singing in a rock and roll band, and we played. It was like a 60s show, and that was great. And I enjoyed that. We went down very well. We held our own and had a great time. And I did a show with our local boys here, the Wurzels, you know, because they're from around this area, and they play here a lot. And where they're very much a West Country act, but of course they're a big draw here, and we did a great show with them. And so yeah, but generally speaking, I've worked on my own rather than with other acts, which has been a conscious decision really. Because sometimes with all the equipment setups and whatnot, it's easier to do your own shows, which I tend to do. And when I had the country band, which we had for about 15 years, we tended to play occasionally with acts before us, solo artists supporting us, really. And so we kind of headlined most of the places we went. We were the main act, so that was kind of how that went.
And what is your favourite sort of music? Because you've obviously done rock, country, and all sorts.
Very complicated complicated answer, really. Like a lot of people who probably listen to the radio show, I like a lot of things. I like a lot of southern music, southern sort of rock music, groups like Lynyrd Skynyrd, artists like Bob Seger, J.J. Cale, and I really like that sort of style. I like country music, the old country music like Merle Haggard, George Jones, Waylon Jennings. I quite like jazz. I've got quite an interest in sort of things like Django Reinhardt, the guitar player, and some modern jazz, Miles Davis, I'm quite interested in. And of course, being a 70s boy, being at school at that time, of course, there was all those bands like Hawkwind, Status Quo, Black Sabbath, and all of that. So grew up with all that. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for that as well, you know. So a mixture, a bit of an eclectic mix here, you know.
My baby, she don't care for me, but I don't worry that she set me free. Well, I got some blues, a new tattoo, and I'm out on the town. Like a cat getting down on the mat, I'm really gonna lay it down. 'Cause I'm a survivor through the troubles and strife, and I keep sailing through the storms of life. Just like a duck, it's water off my back, as long as there's paper over the cracks. Oh, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor. Oh, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor, and that's a fact. Oh, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor.
I notice you're very, very busy this year. On your website, there's loads of gigs listed.
Yeah, don't ask me to remember where I'm going because I don't know.
No, I wasn't going to do that. There's too many, I know.
I know.
And I see you're on another website with one of the agencies that seems to list thousands of people.
Really? I have not seen that.
West, I can't remember what they're called now. West...
Yeah, Great Western.
Great Western Music or something?
Yeah, I'm probably on there. I mean, I'm on websites I don't know about sometimes. There was even a Japanese CD of me somewhere that they were selling for sort of $12, and I'd never sanctioned this. But, I mean, you know, that's the internet, isn't it? You end up everywhere. Whether anybody actually sees these things, I don't know. But obviously you found it, so that's good.
Yeah. So, a Japanese CD, was you actually singing in Japanese?
No, I'm not that. Unfortunately, it was a Japanese CD that it was obviously my songs that someone had half-inched and got them on selling them in Japan, I think. I didn't take too much notice of it, really. It just amused me, you know. Obviously, it's not something that I approve of, people stealing your music, but the trouble is there's not much I could have done about it, save flying to Japan, and I'm not going to do that.
No. Would you ever fancy touring places like Japan? Because a lot of English people go down very well over there, don't they?
I think they do, and I think it's something that you always dream about, getting offers to do things like that. The reality is, the problem is, when you're an act like I am, a locally based act that plays venues around this area, and like we were saying, it's lots of venues on the website. If you disappear for, say, 12 months to tour somewhere else, when you come back, it's very difficult picking up the threads of your work. And the thing is, at the end of the day, we've all got to pay our bills and earn a living, and so that's probably, I think a lot of other artists of my in my world would say the same. It's difficult to leave everything behind, and the older you get, not that I'm old, mind you, but not when you get to a certain age, you've got your home, you've got your life, and it's difficult just to leave it. These things are probably best done when you're perhaps in your 20s and 30s, when you're young enough to disappear, and you don't have such responsibilities. As you get a little bit older, it becomes more difficult just to leave everything behind you.
Do you have any plans to write any songs for anybody famous at all?
Well, it's interesting you should mention it. I don't know if we're going to go on to it, but I've been working recently with Paul Newton, who used to be in the rock band Uriah Heep, and that's been great fun. And we've written I wrote 4 songs which we recorded with him on our CD, Better Late Than Never, and I think at some point you're going to put some of those on your show. And they've been really well received, and Paul's been in Europe playing. He plays with the Uriah Heep Legends band now, and he sells a few of those as part of his merchandise over there. And there's plans to expand that. We're recording a couple of the old Uriah Heep songs that he wrote when he was in the band in the 70s, and I'm writing 3 or 4 extra tracks to make it into an LP, a full-length sort of CD. And we're moving forward with that, and we do play the odd show together. And we've actually got Keith Baker, who was who played drums on the Salisbury album for Uriah Heep, playing on these new tracks we're doing. So that is quite exciting. I've got quite a few good new tracks. I've just released a CD. It's coming out next week, and that is called Chris Rainbow's Wild Bunch All Stars. And there's some tracks on there. One of them, I think we're going to send off to see if Status Quo's management might be interested in giving it a listen, because it's very much based around that kind of style. And we've got a couple of songs we may be sending away. They weren't written specifically for other artists. They just sort of, they're of a standard where I think maybe we should send them away. And so we'll see how we go.
Wow, that would be good if he took those on board.
Well, it's a bit of a long shot, but you never know, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. I've also been asked to sing. Another friend of mine in the West Country has recorded a track that he wants to submit to ZZ Top. I don't know where he'll get with it. It's a lovely track, and he wants me to do the vocals on that. So that's another little interesting project that we're working on. So there's always something going on in the. People ask you to do different things, and obviously writing songs is great. I mean, it's nice to sing cover versions, and I think you might be playing a cover version that I've done on the show, but really it's nice to do your own stuff and write songs. That's a great satisfaction to me to do that.
So how did it come about working with Paul Newton?
Well, it was strange, really. I play quite a lot of shows in the sort of Gloucestershire, Herefordshire, Worcestershire area sometimes, and I was singing in a club, and he was in the club with his wife and some friends having a few drinks and a night out, really, to see the music. And after the show he introduced himself, and obviously I didn't know who he was, and we got chatting, and he gave me his card and said, if you ever need a bass player for anything, give us a call, you see. And when I found out that he was the former player for Uriah Heep, I thought maybe we could do something, I thought, nothing ventured, nothing gained, so I phoned him up and told him that I had some original songs and maybe he'd be interested in playing on the recordings, and he said yes. We got together and started rehearsing, and he came along to one of my shows and played a set with me on stage, and we've done that a couple of times, and we've done these recordings, and we've got a show we're doing together in August, and no, it's great. It's going well. He's a very nice chap and a great musician. So just one of those things that happens along the way. You meet people, and sometimes you hit it off with them, and if you do, and then it's great. Really good.
Now, you're only the second person that I know of that I've spoken to that's actually got you use a Fender Stratocaster, don't you?
I do on stage, yeah. That's the one that I'm using on stage, yeah, I Fender Strat. The reason for that, it's obviously a great all-round guitar. You can play sort of clean country rock sound, you can play blues and stuff, and also, obviously, I do, in my live show, play some instrumental tracks, so it's got the old whammy bar, so you can get that authentic sort of 60s sort of Shadows type sound on it, and that's the reason I use that guitar. Strangely enough, that when I'm recording, I normally play a Gibson Explorer, which I use for anybody who's interested in that side of it. And I usually use an orange amplifier, a valve amplifier, and that goes through a Marshall 4x12 cabinet, and that's what I like to kind of record with. But I've got a few different guitars I've collected over the years. I'm not a big guitar person. I'm not one of these people that's really obsessed with it, but obviously having been around bands and things for a number of years, I've got a few bits and pieces lying around here which I play on recordings. So the Strat is very much my live guitar, but at home and in the studio I tend to use a variety of guitars. So yeah, very interesting really, the different sounds you get from them.
I'll let you guess who the other person is that I spoke to with who's got one.
I think we know. Does he have glasses, and did he play with Cliff Richard?
Yeah, he sure did.
Well, that's a top man. I mean, he did so much for that instrumental sound. I mean, you just can't really put it into words. But some of those records, I mean, most of them are just fantastic. And I'm a great fan of Hank Marvin and the Shadows. And you play them now, they always sound fresh and good. And the rock and roll he did with Cliff Richard, of course, people forget, you know, that some of the great rock and roll records were done by Cliff, and they were called the Drifters in the beginning. Of course, I'm sure people would be aware of that, but they did some great records. Obviously Move It, but there was a lot of other good ones as well. There was one called Apron Strings, which I used to like, and they did a version of It'll Be Me, and some real good stuff in those days.
That's right, and last year he actually brought a new album out as well.
Hank Marvin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't, and I think he had his sons playing on it, which was, I think it was his son was playing on it. So I was reading. I haven't got a copy, Paul, but have you heard it?
Yeah, we've got a copy here.
Is it good?
Yeah. Some tracks I obviously prefer more than others, but
absolutely. But no, I'll have to look out for it. I'll have to give it a listen.
Yeah, it's certainly good. It was, I think it was just called Hank.
I'll look out for it. I did remember that he brought it out, but you know how it is. You see, I think I saw him on the TV promoting it, and then something else must have happened, and I never got a copy. But I will look out for it.
What's it all for? When the one that you turn to don't care no more, no more. It's time to move on. I can't take all the pain. I've got to leave this place. I just cannot stay. The wind is blowing. I can hear the call. Where tomorrow finds me, I don't know at all. The fire that was burning in my soul has grown cold, leading me down, leading me down, leading me down, leading me down. This lonely road, I'm out in the cold. Heading into the sun. It's too late to look back. I'll soon be gone. The wind is blowing. I can hear the call. Where tomorrow finds me, I don't know at all. The fire that was burning in my soul has grown cold.
plans for the next couple of years or so?
Well, I think the most important thing, as I say, I've just finished off my Wild Bunch All-Stars album because I do have a little side project called Chris Rainbow's Wild Bunch UK, and there is a website for that. And that's a little band that we play the odd show with, doing we do tracks like, sort of rock tracks, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Cocaine, Black Magic Woman, and a few original tracks that I've written. And we've just done this CD called The Wild Bunch All-Stars, which features a few different people singing and playing on it with me. And all the songs, apart from two, are original songs, so they're all songs I've written. There's a couple of instrumental passages, and I've done two cover versions by the group Black Oak Arkansas, which is a southern rock band that I'm very interested in. And I did a song that they recorded in the 70s called Son of a Gun, and one of their more recent tracks called Truth Be Known, and they've come out very well. And we're never going to be able to beat the originals, and we wouldn't want to, but I think we've done it justice, and I'm pleased with the album. And that's released next week, and I think that'll be on Spotify, and it'll be available through CD Baby to buy if anybody wants to get hold of it. So yeah, that's cool. I'm then starting work on a couple of music videos for the website because some of these songs need a bit of promotion. So we've got some bits of film in the can. I'm doing a film for a track called Satan's Claw, so I think that's going to be running around a churchyard in amongst Romans and flames and stuff. And then we've got a track called Lazy Boy, which is self-explanatory. It's about lazy people. So we're going to have lots of armchairs and lots of people sitting in them eating burgers and things. So it's it's a tongue-in-cheek bit of fun, and not to be taken too seriously. So we've got a few bits of filming to do, and then I'm finishing off this record with Paul. We've got these tracks to record, carry on doing lots of gigs, and working on some original tracks, and we'll just see how we go. But I've got plenty of things to be doing, and I've got no plans to be hanging up my rock and roll shoes anytime soon.
That's good. What you should do for the Lazy People video is have people sitting down or laying down with their phones or laptops or whatever these days. Well,
again, these days one has to be tactful when we don't do these things. But it's a song which is it's about people who don't want to do anything and don't want to work and so on, and it's just a bit of fun. I'm not sure how the video will turn out, because there is a famous chair you can buy called a Lazy Boy, where you sit with you've got a place to put your beer and everything, which really I quite like one myself, because I sometimes feel quite lazy. So I thought I might get a sort of film of one of these chairs and put it on there, because it might be quite funny just to have lots of sofas and seats where people sort of sit on, like we all do when we veg out in front of the telly,
Is any of your music on YouTube?
Yeah, I've got quite a lot of videos out there, and you can get them through my websites, which I don't know if you've got the web addresses, or we'll be giving them out, but just in case you're not, it's www.chrisrainbow.co.uk, and the other one would be www.wildbunchuk.co.uk. And if you go to those sites, you can get the videos there, and they are on YouTube. So if you look on YouTube, I have got stuff on YouTube, quite a lot actually, so that you can find it if you look for it.
Do you have time for doing social media at all?
I don't do social media at all, and the reason isn't because I just find that having the website, people can find out where I'm playing, and if they want to buy a T-shirt or a CD, they can. And if they want to get hold of me, and I'm more than happy for people to do this, they can email. But social media, it verges on your private life. Now, I'm not suggesting I have some great private life, but I do value a little bit of privacy. So I tend to think when I finish singing in the club or I finished a day at the studio, I don't particularly have the time to be messing about with that stuff. It may be something I will do in the future. It's more of a time thing, really. I'm quite busy. I'm interested in motorcycles. I've got a Harley Davidson bike. I like to mess around with and ride. And I've got things I'm doing. I'm writing songs and doing things. And at the moment, I think the websites are satisfactory. They're not brilliant. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect in life. But I do think that social media would probably tie up a lot of my time messing about with, and at the moment, and also it can be invasive into your private life. So the answer is no, not at the minute. No social media at the minute. If
Well-
that changes, I'll let you know, Paul.
Okay, well, at least you're busy, and it really. I guess if you did ever start the social media, don't put anything about your private life. Just put. Well, there's no need, is there? Because it's all on your website. Everything.
Absolutely, and that's quite. I mean, there's bits of my private world on there. I've got pictures of me at home. It's just, keeping that sort of difference between the work and your private world. But in the music industry, it sometimes is a blurred line, isn't it? It can be a blurred line.
That's right. We certainly don't want to know what you've had for breakfast or anything like that.
What did I have today? I don't think I had much today. I'm just trying to think now.
That's the sort of thing
No.
they put on those things, though. Oh, today I had so-and-so for breakfast. And
Exactly, yeah. It wouldn't be very interesting to know that I had Al Penn at 10 o'clock. Would it?
Not really.
Hey, did you happen to see the most beautiful girl in the world? And if you did, was she crying? Hey, if you happen to see the most beautiful girl that walked out on me, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I need my baby. Oh, won't you tell her that I love her? If you happen to see the most beautiful girl that walked out on me, tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I need my baby. Oh, won't you tell her that I love her?
By the way, has there been a favourite place you've actually gigged at?
Oh, that's good. I used to, as I say, I lived in California. I did some nice shows there out in the open air. I did one at a NACO West resort park, which is, for anybody who's been there, they're sort of big open spaces where they have a clubhouse and people take their RVs, their big vehicles where they camp, and they're very nice places, and they get a lot of people in them. And I did a show for one of those parks. They employed me to play a country show there, and they had a big wooden stage. I can always remember it, and it was a lovely setting with the trees behind. And it would have been in California, but I can't quite remember exactly where it was. It's 20 years ago now or more. But I did have some lovely white cowboy boots on and trousers and the western belt and everything. And I was singing, and it was in the afternoon. People were all sitting around drinking beer and having a nice time. And as I was tapping my feet on the stage, I must have disturbed some insects, because when I looked down at my boots, they had turned from white to black. And what it was, my whole bottom of my jeans and my boots were now covered with great big ants. And believe me, the ants in California are a damn sight bigger than the ants here. So luckily, because I had these boots on, they didn't get to me, but I managed to get rid of them. But it was quite a shock, really, mid-song, to look down and see that your boots had changed colour. So that was a lovely place to play. Really enjoyed it. And to be honest, I've often found, I like playing in the Midlands area. There's friendly people there. I like that. But most places are great. You get the odd place where people can be difficult and it can be a bit rough and ready. But I've had some great experiences over the years, and I've got to say most people are great, And I like going everywhere. I can't really say where my favourite place is, because I'd like to say most places are my favourite place, because it's a pleasure to be asked to go to places and have people come along and have a good night with you. You can't knock it, can you?
That's right. Yep, very true. It's a shame you can't come and gig down this way sometime.
Well, it's funny. I've never really, that area is a lovely area, and well, you never say never, do you? That's what I think. You never know.
That's very true.
Just as we're speaking, someone may be picking up the phone right now and saying, do you want to come down? And so, I'm sure one day I might get back up there and do a few shows. It would be nice, because obviously I come from that area, and I'd like to do that. I've never thought about doing that, to be honest. I think I have been asked. I've been up quite, up that area. I used to go quite high up to places like Corby and Northampton and so on. So we're sort of pushing on that way. But, it's a long way to come and go in a night. And when I had the country band, we did a lot of shows where we would be playing in, say, Northampton on a Friday, and then we'd have a show in Cornwall on the Saturday, and then we'd probably be on the Sunday in Swindon. So we were doing crazy journeys to and fro. And, I think if to get up to your area, we'd have to stay over, or I'd have to stay over. And of course, I think sometimes it negates doing it sometimes if you've got to spend a lot of money on accommodation and so on.
That's right. I guess the travelling is probably more tiring than doing the gig, is it?
The travelling is difficult because when I first started my career as a solo artist in the sort of, mid-80s, if you like, there wasn't the traffic. It was a different world. And if you got a booking in, say, I can remember doing bookings in, say, Winchester on a Friday night, I could leave here and guarantee that I'd be able to get there with no problem at all. And I could get the 4 other members of the band there. We'd either go in a van together or people would travel on their own. But nowadays, you can suddenly find yourself in a roadblock or traffic problems. We're a much more crowded little island than we used to be with traffic, and time frames have changed. Where a journey you'd say, well, it's going to take you the best part of 2 hours to get to Birmingham. Now you might think, well, if it's a Friday night in the summertime, you might suddenly come out onto the M5 and find you just can't get anywhere, and that's what's changed, and that's changed the way I look at bookings. So I tend to think, well, if it's a Friday night, I would perhaps want to go in a different direction to the main traffic, which may all be coming down to the southwest of England. So you want to go, you've got to start thinking about when you take work, what nights you want to work, whether it's a bank holiday or whatever, because of the traffic. And that's a shame. Back in the early days, there wasn't that problem at all. And travelling was easier, definitely easier then.
If someone's got a venue and they think they'd like to book you for an evening, if it's sort of localish to you, how do they do that? Do they have to go through the website for that?
They can email the website, put in their details on, and I will telephone them, leave me their contact number or contact details. And that's what people do who don't know me. Generally speaking, people, if they want to get hold of my number to call me, they can do that through the website to email, and I will call them, or they can, if they leave their number. So there's no problem at all. So I'm quite happy for people to do that. I mean, generally, obviously, I'm quite well known in this area, so people know me. They take my business card and they phone me here at home. But people who perhaps are further afield very often will email the websites, and then I will get back to them as soon as possible. Okay.
Do you want to give out the website address again?
Yeah, it's www.chrisrainbow.co.uk or www.wildbunchuk.co.uk.
Okay, well, I'll get you to introduce the track in just a moment, but first of all, I'd like to thank you for being on the late slot, for taking out some time of your busy schedule, and
thank you.
Good luck with everything in the future.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Thanks for the interview, and we're going to play out with a track now. Shall I decide what we're going to play out with? How about a track from the Chris Rainbow and Paul Newton CD, Better Late Than Never, All's Not Lost.
I can hear her calling me home. but I didn't quite get there. Fought hard, but I just couldn't win. Don't think that I've stopped believing. The fire still burns deep within. I could hear the fat lady singing. I could hear her calling me home. Calling me home. The final sunset, the lonesome bell ringing. All's not lost. All's not lost. All's not lost. All's not lost till it's over and done. Cause things never stay the same. I'll stay and take my chances and hope the sun shines again. I can hear the fat lady singing. I can hear her calling me home. Final sunset, the lonesome bell